The village had a balance of two sets of values. Let me tell you what the village was really about. It was about collectivism, first of all. It held the values that it was good to be committed to another person. Giving your life to another was not risky, it was security. It gave you a joint identity. It helped you to get outside of yourself and involved with another. Parenting, by its very nature, is collectivistic. Marriage, as an institutional structure, is collectivistic. And the village said, well, that's good. When you were growing up, it was all about you, but as you come into maturity and young adulthood, you want to get out of self, and you want to learn that giving to others comes back to yourself. But the village also had a set of values that we'll call individualism. Now, individualism said personal aspirations. You've got to develop yourself. That's why the village very often would say, what are you doing in college? Tell me about how you're developing. Or you're not going to college, you've got a job. What is your job? How are you doing? What are you getting? How are you handling your finances? Are you getting established? The village was like the conscience of individualism. It prompted people to grow and to mature and to become more individuals, self-actualized, you might say. But the village held both sets of values. Something happened around the 80s, the 70s. Something happened to this balance. All of a sudden, individualism became weightier and weightier, became more and more heavy, became more and more supreme, and collectivism began to go into the background until all of a sudden the scales broke and they became categorically competitive. No longer were they compatible. No longer were they complementary. No longer did one benefit the other and the other benefited the one. All of a sudden you were either in the category of individualism as a stage of life. You are an individual. You need to spend a lot of time maturing and growing and developing as an individual. Find yourself. Be careful of getting in marriage long before you find yourself. Oh my gosh, that's detrimental. Don't try to find yourself in marriage. People are lost in marriage anyway. Lost. In fact, I remember another episode of Lost. No, sorry. Individualism became supreme, and when this shift occurred, there was a tremendous change in the attitude and beliefs about marriage and marital parenting. All of a sudden, what was complementary became competitive. And even though there was this dream of marriage, the actual institution and structure of marriage began to be viewed more and more negative and risky. And interestingly enough, I think dating and romance and sex all started to be pulled out of marriage and put into the individualistic value set. So it was all about, how does this fulfill me? How does this make me happy? I don't know. You're not really that sexually good. I think I'll move on. And it's all started changing, the whole mindset, so that interpersonal romantic relationships became more in the set of individualistic values, and marriage became more of just a collectivistic type of relationship. And the view was, that will restrict this. If I get married, it's going to restrict my individuality. I'll give you a perfect example from the Wall Street Journal just a few months ago. David Lapp wrote an article citing Jeffrey Arnett, who I interviewed 2 years ago when I did that keynote, and went out and met with him and talked to him. And he's a guy, but he's really optimistic. He always looks at everything in a positive way, which I'm not sure is fair in what really is going on in the world around us. But in his book, Emerging Adulthood, he said many young people today delay marriage because they're afraid it will deny them the leisure of identity exploration and self-focused development. Arnett went on and say, many of the identity explorations of the emerging adult years are simply for fun, a kind of play, a part of gaining a broad range of life experiences before settling down and taking on the responsibilities of adult life. Well, that makes sense, I guess. But when the average age of marriage is pushing 30, isn't that like a long time before you take on the responsibilities of adult life? And Lapp says it so well. Watch what he says. Young people sense that marriage marks the end of adventure and the beginning of monotony. Implicit is the dichotomy between the individual fulfillment now and commitment later. Do you see what he's saying? He's saying the same thing I'm saying. We had a split of two sets of values, and one became opposing to the other. One became constraining to the other. And even though people want to get married, that split has actually paralyzed them. Once the values of collectivism were viewed as restrictive and constraining to individualism, get this now, singles became polarized between the individual pursuit of their own happiness and the dream, the image, the illusion of a marriage. And marriage, to many singles, became an image that was kind of a dream, but the actual thought of the reality of it paralyzed them.